Spring returns. War looms. They have the radio. Bring it on! Oh yeah, guess they'll need a second one too. Oops. Well, before they bust their balls making another one, they can at least try it out in landline mode. They come to the realization from one of the 100 tales that Senku's dad left him some toys inside his, gravestone. Carved into glass is a record. They knock out a record player out of crap they have lying around. These guys get to hear the voice of their village founders. This must be the equivalent of a British person hearing a recording of King Arthur, or a French person Napoleon, or an American Ronald McDonald. Tay-Tay busts out a song, and the crowd goes nuts. Now, time to lead these poor bastards into hell. Tsukasa and his crew will be waiting for them. And that was Series 1. What a banger! I enormously enjoyed it. Senku is a wonderfully fleshed out main character, while somehow remaining a gloriously smug douchebag all the way through. He talks an awful lot of shit about his friends, but they clearly adore him anyway. And for all he tries to play aloof and logical and above such things, the feeling is clearly mutual. In the same way, his hair somehow carries its own weight in a world without hairspray. He carries the whole series. He is a quite indomitable force of will, and possesses a provocative, often lurid sense of humor. Having personally known a number of truly gifted scientists in my time, I would say this rings more accurate than you might think. I was once teaching a class of undergraduates how to do bioinformatics. I told one of them to open a DNA sequence file with a text editor to look at the data inside. It's little more than a string of letters. Incredulous, the student asked me, "Look at it? With my eyes?" Later, I told this story to the professor running the class, one of the smartest people I've ever had the pleasure to meet. He said, "Yes, didn't you hear? We've got a new way of reading files these days," and turned round and pretended to type on his computer using his backside. History bears it out too. Sir Isaac Newton springs to mind, an obsessive genius who rewrote the entire fields of physics and mathematics in ways we use to this day. And also, an insufferable, egotistical asshole. Take his famous quote, "If I have seen further than others, it's only because I stood on the shoulders of giants." Very humble, very modest. Only it wasn't. It was a savage burn on short King Robert Hooke, who claimed Newton stole his idea. Another reason I find him so plausibly written is because throughout the series his actions, and the beliefs that drive him, are clearly motivated by his background, but perhaps not quite in the way you might expect. His vision of the future is pretty much exactly the same as the past he left behind. He plans to bring back literally everyone. With them will return, more or less, all the institutions and arrangements of power that they existed within. Senku makes no real mention or judgment of any of this, besides that it produced a lot of cool gizmos and media, so we can only presume he's basically okay with it all. And as the child of a professional managerial class tenured academic, that makes perfect sense. Society as a whole works pretty favorably for him. He's able to blow up a park without spending 40 years in prison. He's able to launch a rocket into low orbit without setting off the strategic launch detection systems and causing an international incident. It's unlikely he's ever come into any real, fundamental conflict with the status quo. Tsukasa, on the other hand, clearly has fought the law, and at least initially, the law won. I've seen people say he's a fascist, but I don't think that tracks. If you think fascism is where you get what you want through violence, then maybe. But that isn't what fascism is. To me, he sounds much more like a communist. Much of his basic idea certainly lines up well. He would benefit from reading more to refine his theoretical understanding, perhaps eventually moderating his dogmatic opposition to science outright, in favor of bending it to the service of mankind, rather than as a tool to bend mankind into service. At his age, though, it's hard to blame him for not doing this. Before petrification, he was clearly preoccupied with more fun things, like going on TV and beating people up. It's especially notable to me that at no point does the show actually demonstrate him to be wrong. The most we get is sinister music while he lays it out. This narrative perspective also affects how the show deals with violence. Overall, it's a fairly light-hearted affair. There is violence, even lethal intent fairly often, but nobody actually dies. At least, not in the flesh. It's very possible to do garish, over-the-top, gloriously colourful violence, and have it be fucking awesome. Or to really delve into the horrors of war and depression, and the blackest depths of the human soul. But we don't always have to go there. There's plenty else to see in the world besides. For a show that is about the realities of science and engineering, and their interplay with humanity, there must be some engagement with the inevitable violence that comes with those things. And I reckon that's handled reasonably well, without detracting from the core message. That learning is fun, kiddos. I'm also deeply impressed with the extent to which the science presented in this series is legit. Yes, there are criticisms that can be made. How could any one person possibly remember all this stuff? Who can recall the sulfur drug synthesis pathway off the top of their head? I wouldn't expect a biochemistry PhD to be able to do that, let alone some punk-ass 16-year-old kid. But I'm perfectly happy to cut them some slack, because it's an anime for entertainment. Pretty much everything I've thought to check has checked out. Brewing hooch, making gunpowder, cobbling together a radio, forging fucking katanas. All the real deal. However, as a steadfast believer that the Earth is flat and that birds aren't real, I'm compelled to rate this series 2 David Ikes out of 10. Did you enjoy this video? Then hit all the buttons. I assume some of them do interesting things. Would you like to see Dr. Stone Series 2? Or another anime? Please leave a comment. And with that, I'll see you next time.